Okay, guys, right off the bat, we're going to go back to 1983 a little bit and talk about Batman the Outsiders. And when I was really starting to take this collecting seriously, I wanted a #1 issue of a series so I could follow it as I got older and kind of get like every issue that came out. And lo and behold, Batman and the Outsiders is what I got. So what I have here is a stack of a comic book that I have a love-hate relationship with, but we're going to do a review with it. I kind of look at this series as half cup, a cup half empty, cup half full if you want to do it. You know, on the surface it's actually sort of lame. It's safe. When I was reading the book, as young as I was seeing these storylines that could go this way or that way. 2 or 3 of the characters I didn't even like. And a lot of the storylines just seemed contrived. This book always felt like they were stuck in their own little bubble, and there's just ways these characters could really go. Now, why am I starting off with negative stuff saying about this? Is because, you know, that's how I feel about the book. Now, as a comic collector and a guy who's gotten into comics, we want to go back and remember what was going on. 1980. 79, 80, Perez and Marv Wolfman came over from Marvel, and what they did behind the scenes is that they had already started plans for DC's 50th anniversary of Crisis on Infinite Earth. Yes, they started 5 years before the book came out doing research and stuff. A guy named Peter Sanderson was hired as a guy to do research, and his whole job was to do nothing but read every comic book that DC ever put out and do little notes on what was the first appearance of this character, what book was it in, how does it kind of tie in. Nothing really major. If you want to see what he came up with, you get the who's who. Now, here's where I'm getting with. This book was conceived by Mike W. Barr and Jim Aparo. Batman the Outsider's first appearance was Batman the Brave and the Bold, #200, last issue of the series, and this is what took over. Now, we're going to touch on what makes this book sort of kind of a key issue. And I don't know how old Batman was to this. It came out in what, 38? Anyway. And all the time up to 1983 with Batman here. This is actually the 3rd issue that is considered a #1 Batman book. And I mean as in Batman #1, Legends of the Batman by Len Wein, and I go a little blank when I get on camera here. That was the 2nd Batman #1, if you will, and this is the 3rd. Okay, in all that time, it was not Legends of the Dark Knight, Shadow of the Bat. It came out in the late 80s, early 90s. I remember those getting, the first #1 Batman book in forever. No, this was the 3rd #1 Batman book. Surprising. As you can see by the cover, he's quitting the Justice League, and he's coming up with these guys, the Outsiders. And Black Lightning and Metamorpho had chances to become members of the Justice League and didn't do it. Now, going back to what was going on, Marv Wolfman had things going on in his Teen Titans book, okay? And what at this point in time, Robin and Batman had split up. And what was going on is Marv Wolfman was not writing Teen Titans stories like in the 60s. He was writing these kids as young adults and what was going on. Now, getting back to Batman the Outsiders, Lucius Fox is kidnapped, and he's in Markovia, maybe, which is Geoforce. Okay, that's going to be the guy. Well, you know what? Let's do it this way. I actually absolutely hated Geoforce. Now, the guy in the orange and brown costume, that's Geoforce. He is a prince of Markovia. He gets his powers in this issue. It's very Captain America-like. Scientists have given a member of the royal family powers because they're having a big civil war. There's this big old World War II war criminal who's got his hands in everything, and his little country's having a civil war. You have Black Lightning, who has come along with Batman separately. They don't know each other is there to try to save Lucius Fox. Nobody knows why Halo's there. She just kind of wakes up and doesn't remember anything. Katana's there. Nobody knows why she's there. Now, Marv Wolfman and Frank Miller had a little hand on kind of wiping on this concept of Batman Outsiders, and everybody would imagine that Katana was probably what he sort of gave some input on that might to the writer, and then Marv Wolfman had Terra in the Teen Titans going on, so he kind of got in there. Not only did he do that, but as I was going back to talking about Marv Wolfman, if you can follow me here, working on Crisis on Infinite Earths, they actually put a little plug in there. Markovia was saved in World War II by, I'm going to go into a brief little history here, by Sergeant Rock. Now here's what's very, I think, kind of funny, is there's an issue of Crisis on Infinite Earths, probably in the first 3 issues somewhere, where you see the scene of Sergeant Rock coming in with the troops, and it's snowing, and he's getting ready to save Markovia, but Crisis has hit, and it's snowing, and he's sitting there beside a Geoforce. Now, before we move on, just to let you know what they've done, this book was real safe and had a real formula that I was talking about. I kept telling you it was in a bubble, going back to what I said at the beginning. First story arc is the origin of how the Outsiders got together in a few little adventures. It's actually a Geoforce story. Okay. Then they have a few adventures, and next we get a Black Lightning story. Okay. Alright, Masters of Disaster, not jumping around. Then we get a Katana story. Everybody gets a little 4-part arc, so on and so forth. Then you had, a little Metamorpho story coming up. And so we're going to do the first arc here, if you've hung in with me so far, and I know I'm rattling here. So, Batman wants to go to Markovia, save Lucius Fox. Justice League says no. Really out of character. It's real contrived. Comes up like, we've already talked, the government's talked to us. They don't want us to have anything to do it, so we're not going to do it. Batman is just being a dick. He's not being grim and gritty. Smacks Superman's hand. Screw you guys. I'm going to do it. I quit. You said the Justice League wouldn't go in. Well, I'm not a member of the Justice League. So he goes in, and he just happens to start running across all these heroes. Metamorpho is sitting in a corner, all took apart and everything. And we'll get into number 2. Long story short, everybody's captured, and the new little heroes here are going to save the day. That's Baron Bedlam. He's actually more or less Nazi. He's a thinly veiled Nazi. He's left over from World War II, and he's one causing all the problems in Geoforce's country. Now, there's a theme of resurrection going on there. Metamorpho is pretty much dead. Somebody took a gun that shot a wire, cut his head off, his arms and stuff, and he's in a pile of body parts. Black Lightning hits him with lightning. He gets resurrected. Geoforce actually gets shot. Just like, it's almost like the Captain America thing. Instead of the, Captain America, when he got his powers, they shot the scientist. The Nazis shot the scientist. Well, they shot him in the back, and he's put in the earth, and he comes back to life. Or, the earth killed him. He's part of the earth now. Baron Bedlam would be sort of like the Red Skull, because he gets the powers also. But, big spoiler alert, this powers leave him almost, because only members of the royal family can keep the powers, and the powers leave him, and Geoforce throws Baron Bedlam to the people with their pitchforks and their things as they're on top of a castle at the end of the story, and lets them do their little justice for putting through this. And Batman goes, I like how you think, and invites Geoforce to join. This is not, this Batman was way out of character for what was going on back then. And I believe that was part of the story, which we'll get to that then if you're following me along. They come back to Gotham, and to be a little, get the book going here. They find the little villain pops up, Agent Orange. And that, a little Vietnam thing going on there. You see everybody coming to Gotham, and you find out Halo has amnesia and don't remember anything. And I've always suspected that Frank Miller worked on, Halo a little bit there with the costume. It's all black and red. But, Geoforce leaves his brother, as king and everything of the country, and leaves and stuff. And can you just imagine the royal family of England? 2 of them have gotten powers. There is a sister, which we'll get to. They get powers and they go to America. Instead of staying home and being their country's little heroes, they're going to get trained by Batman. Geoforce is just an awful character. He was probably right there with my hatred of Booster Gold when it comes to character. Anyway, they're trying to mold and become a team and everything like that. And what you start figuring out is Robin's over in Teen Titans. Batman and Robin have had a split. Batman's just lonely. he's missing Dick Grayson, that is. And that's so he forms the Outsiders to kind of try to fill that void and have people to train with Robin. He's having problems with Robin growing up, and Robin's got problems being a kid since he's running the Teen Titans. Which leads to, I'm missing an issue here over the years and stuff, but anyway, Batman and the Outsiders number 5, which crosses over with Teen Titans 37. Let's see if we can put these together the right way. Yeah. There we go. Is that right? Anyway, you got a Perez cover, and you got Jim Aparo inking over Perez with him. And this is where you find out that Tara, where is she at on here? Tara and Geoforce are brother and sister. This is why, and they're fighting the Brotherhood of Evil and stuff, and they reconcile, and you find out Tara had run away, and they have no idea what's going on. And actually, you know, it's a really good crossover. Marv Wolfman came in and co-plotted it with Mike W. Barr, which kind of saved it there. And, you know, Halo's interacting with the Teen Titans and stuff, which, you know, I don't see why she just didn't go ahead and go. And that's where this book kind of crosses over with that little arc there of having Terror part of, you know, Geoforce and stuff. It ties into the Judas Contract, where Terra ends up being, you find out she's, you know, been with Deathstroke, and she's turned on everybody, and she's just a bad girl. And what's funny is Marv Wolfman apparently had this thing, if you're a bad guy, you smoke. Whenever Terra was with Deathstroke, she'd be smoking. And they insinuated that this 15, 16-year-old girl was sleeping with Deathstroke. And that's where these books actually kind of come sort of key. They tie into Crisis a little bit. One of the first clues that the Crisis was coming, because there's just one panel of Sergeant Rock's head looking at the castle where you know he saves Markovia. They show that scene in Crisis. And then years later, Brad Meltzer writes a story. This is coming out during Final Crisis. This is in '08. I'm pretty sure Last Will and Testament. And this is basically where Geoforce does a little soul searching, and he goes up and he gets his revenge on Deathstroke for, you know, what happened to his sister in Judas Contract. Like, you know, over 30 years later. Okay, now moving on, if you've stuck out here with me. This issue is significant because you Batman the Animated Series fans, I know I'm all over the place, number 6, 1984. Batman the Animated Series, Paul Dini wrote one called Heart of Ice. That's where Mr. Freeze became cool all over again. Okay, his wife was frozen and he was trying to unthaw her, and everything comes along and they screw it up and he becomes Mr. Freeze, and his, you know, the romanticism is there and his aching and stuff. Well, it happened in here first with the Cryogenic Man. It's almost, there's a lot of the same story in here. Man and his family froze themselves in the 50s or 60s to make a better life, and you find out he woke up but he can't get them. So he's sitting there and he's sitting there looking at all of them just all frozen and everything. If he could just get to his wife and everything would be alright. And they thought it was, you know, 1955. So when I saw Heart of Ice, I was really like, somebody's read Batman and the Outsiders. And it's a two-parter. It goes into number 7 here, kind of a generic thing. And if you really wanted to stretch some of these important factors in Batman and the Outsiders, it's also the first time Jim Aparo had to have somebody ink him. He always inks his own stuff going back to the 60s. And it was he broke down on this, got sick or something, and somebody had to come in and ink him for the first time. That Perez cover is an example. But yeah, we have the Cryogenic Man, and he's going to take organs and stuff from Katana and stuff to give to his wife. You know, I mean, it kind of got a little seedy here and there. But anyway, that's where Heart of Ice came from. Moving on. Okay. And then, of course, we've got a little Phantom Stranger in there for the Batman and the Outsiders. Where Are the Children? A little Christmas story. And I don't know what really stands out in this. We get a demon-possessed baby, you know. You know, part of the story and everything like that. And like I said, a lot of these are just kind of out there. But anyway, that's just the first part of Batman and the Outsiders I was wanting to get at and talk about how it kind of touched on a few things. and how it could be a throwaway book, but it had the luck of being in the right place at the right time with the right people. So, and the right fans. You know, Brad Meltzer, Judd Winnick, they all were fans of it. They're writing comics now. And, you know, in the future, Alan Davis comes on and a few other things happen. Alright. I think we'll just leave it at there if you've hung in there. I might do a part 2 of Batman and the Outsiders. But I just kind of wanted to get out there and show you that some of these books from the early 80s, you know, they had a little life of their own there. Okay, later.